Hello, welcome to a special Gardener's World celebrating Christmas. I'm planting up a pot for winter flowers. Now, winter flowers, I have to say, are few and far between, and to have just one pot focusing all your attention on something floral brightens the darkest winter day. And this centerpiece is a Hellebore. This is Helleborus ballardii maestro. And the key thing about this is it flowers from November through till March. It flowers and flowers. And I'm going to take those pastel colours and the slightly pewtery grey of these leaves and work with it to create a Christmas pot. Now, coming up on today's programme. Rachel invites the florist Arthur Parkinson to help her create some truly stylish Christmas decorations.
I've got a crazy idea. I've got loads of these. Right?
Look at that.
I mean, that's more than my family can eat.
Homegrown Brussels sprouts in your Christmas
Yes.
swag. Makes sense.
So bear
to
with me.
Yeah.
Let's see what happens.
We visit Sue Kent in her garden as she prepares some gardening gifts for Christmas.
I've got my Christmas jumper on and I'm playing with soil. It could go horribly wrong, but I've got lovely rosemary and it's going to be on my Christmas table, but a take-home present for my guests.
Adderley explores the historic gardens at Levins Hall in all their winter glory.
The rigid formality of the gardens was an expression of the owner's wealth, status and power.
And Carol joins the comedian Joe Lycett to explore his garden and his newfound love of growing vegetables.
I love that.
I
What
know.
on earth is it?
It is a cailette. Never done them before.
I've never seen it before.
I've just popped in some bulbs. These are Crocus Jeanne d'Arc, which will come up through the rest of the planting that I'm going to put in there. Now, the next thing I want to pop in is actually evergreen. It's not floral, but it's a really good foil. This is the soft shield fern. Now, these are quite small, but it will grow really large, and these in time will get a couple of feet across, and they are absolutely beautiful. But I can pop these just around the pot, and you can see it just sets off the rather hard shininess of the Hellebore with this soft, very vibrant green. So they will fit in there, and that's an evergreen foil, and now we want a bit of colour. At this stage, the flowers are yet to appear, but this is Cyclamen coum, and the delicate flowers will start to appear soon after Christmas and then flower till mid-spring. And you can see that even though the flowering hasn't started, the leaves are fantastic. You have this lovely silvery colour, and then underneath the intense purple. So we'll plant these around. One of the great things about doing a winter pot like this is that everything can be transplanted into the garden when you want to use the pot for a summer display. And then, to give it a special colour, now I've got some violas. I love their delicacy, but they have the robustness of winter flowering pansies. They will flower and flower throughout winter, regardless of the weather. And if you keep deadheading them, pinching off the spent flowers, new ones will keep reappearing. Well, I'll finish this off and go and position it, but I confess that my own Christmas preparations can't begin to match Rachel's, either for skill or even enthusiasm, because she is somebody who absolutely adores Christmas, I know. And this year, to help her get ready, she's had a visit from Arthur Parkinson.
I have to say that for me, one of the absolute best things of this time of year is decorating. And I'm not thinking of tinsel and that sort of thing, but everything that you can grow in your garden and then sort of run out at the last minute, usually for me it's the last minute, and snip it off and make beautiful decorations. So I'm in 7th heaven today.
So wonderful to see this smorgasbord feast of foliage, isn't it? And I've been thinking about Christmas right from the start of my seed sowing, actually. So a lot of the things that we've got here are seed heads from annual grasses that I've grown. I've harvested it, saved it.
So what are you planning to make with all this beautiful material?
I'm going to make for you a crazy sea creature-like rock pool wreath, which I think will look gorgeous on your door. And as this fades after Christmas, we can keep it in the garden, and it's a natural bird feeder. So we'll attract in all the blue tits and goldfinches right the way through the new year.
Well, you know what? You already have me at crazy seafood. where I'm just already dying to see what you're going to make. And I think I'm going to do something different because I always make a wreath.
Yeah.
And I saw last year that people were beginning to make swags, apparently, they call them in America, and sort of doing them more over here, which is essentially, you know, it's an upside-down posy. So it'll be a bit different. See how it looks.
I think it's going to be beautiful. I can see the shape already coming from those branches.
Well, hopefully. I think we've got so much gorgeous stuff here, but actually we probably need to clear the decks a bit, don't we, just to work.
See what we've got to work with.
So I'm just going to move this aside. This almost provides a frame, doesn't it? A bit of cedar.
Yeah.
I can tie all sorts of things onto there. Maybe a bit big, I might take a bit off that.
But with the thick branch, it's almost like that's going to be a trellis, isn't it, for everything else to be attached onto.
So that's a good starting point for me.
So this is like my trellis, copper ring, lasts for years, and what they're brilliant for is putting moss onto. And I bought moss today off my grand's lawn, actually.
Yeah, I've got so much in mine too.
It's basically like the sofa onto which everything's going to be pushed into, and it'll be really great. So I'm just going to wedge it into the copper wiring.
OK. Oh, you see, I'm feeling Christmassy now.
But what I must remember to do is put my fancy ribbon on.
What I quite often do as well is use some of the string and make a loop behind.
Yeah,
so I might actually hang it from that.
From that, yeah.
And then the ribbon can be the pretty stuff. Isn't this just lovely? Just
so
being
nice,
outside.
being out here.
It smells Christmassy. I think it must be, I don't know, maybe it's the cedar, but it's got that, just that bit, and the moss, actually.
Well, the moss was a really good workout, so I burnt off all my mince pies already, the calories, so I can have another big box of them when I go in.
Definitely.
So that's ready to fill now.
That looks good. It's really firm, actually, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a good foundation.
Yeah, if you feel it with your knuckles, and I can't go through to the table.
Yeah.
So that's the main test.
You know you've got it right.
Yeah.
I've got some Cotoneaster that still has its berries on. Can have all this.
Such a good Christmas red. My first foliage is what I bought from my pots at home today. You might recognise this grass. It's annual. Yeah. It's called Panic Frost Explosion.
It's so beautiful, isn't it?
It's like spun sugar for Christmas.
Exactly like that.
Beautiful.
You're right.
So I've attached the string again to the back of the wreath, and I'm just again going over the moss and over the panicum stems.
Oh, I really love that.
Yeah.
That's going to be lovely.
Isn't it beautiful?
So Christmassy, isn't it?
And so exotic as well.
Yeah.
Amaranthus.
Yes.
Red Army, this one. The nice thing about these stems is they are chunky enough to be pushed into that moss, and the moss actually bites into these amaranthus stems and holds them. And at this point, it's almost like trying to envisage it as a clock face. 12 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock, then 9 o'clock. So I'll start to put more heavy things in those locations, and then just make sure the rest of it is really bushy.
I'm thinking I'm going to put a few bits of rosehip on, again, just building up that red. And you know, you could make these instead for a Christmas tree. Wouldn't they be beautiful, just wired on
Beautiful.
and attached to the tree? You do that with the children.
Yeah.
So lovely, these cones. I think I'm going to have a few of those just sort of nestling in there.
I'm at
How
the
are you
stage
doing?
where I want to add my sort of crowning glory of these Christmas wreaths, the hydrangea heads. I've not got many, and I picked them probably about early October, actually, which is the best time because the cold, the first mornings of autumn really intensify their colour. They're perfect for the time of year when I would want a wreath on the door. I do like doing it last minute, and that means you can put things like hydrangeas out. They're not going to bleach straight away. Have you grown this before, Rachel?
I haven't actually.
It's wonderful. It's Nicandra pasiloides, and in each sort of purse of bracts there's a seed pod, and that explodes. It self-seeds everywhere. It's a bit of a thug, but I love it for the dried shape.
Right, now I've just put the last of the cones. I've got a crazy idea. What do we all have at Christmas? Loads of. Brussels sprouts.
Oh.
Brussels sprouts, right, so I grow them here, so I've got loads of these, right?
Look at
I mean,
that.
that's more than my family can eat, for sure.
Homegrown Brussels sprouts in your Christmas
Yes.
swag. Makes sense
So bear
to
with me.
Yeah.
Let's see what happens. There we are. They're
There we
like
go.
giant beads.
They are, aren't they? You could have
Okay.
even do a necklace of them, maybe. Be the goddess of the vegetable garden for Christmas.
Maybe not. Maybe not. Right. Arthur, can you help me actually? Just hold it up so,
Yeah,
so
of
I can
course.
see if this mad idea does actually work. What do you think?
I love them. They're
quite
just an
fun.
extra add-on that just grooves it all up.
Yeah,
I love that.
they are groovy. I think ribbon now. Gee, I'm feeling gold. I think let's
so.
just go for it. Luckily, because I've got a piece of twine actually doing the hanging bit, this only has to look pretty.
Ah, that's nice.
I think that will sort of do.
I just think some crabapple, again with the Nicandra, that round shape, it'll just give it one last different kind of form.
Are we ready to go and hang them up and see how they look?
I think so,
Yeah.
yeah, definitely.
And why don't we, because we've been so industrious, have a bit of a tipple as well while we're
I
doing
think
it?
so, for an
Come on then.
afternoon's work.
There we are. It's quite big, isn't it?
So beautiful.
What do you think? I think maybe a bit of that old man's beard.
Bit of
Shall
the
I
old
try
man's
it?
beard,
Because
yes.
I just feel a bit of dangle. What do you think?
I love that. It's really made it.
Yeah?
You always forget how heavy they are by the end
Yes.
of doing them. I think he's secure. One last thing that I envisaged going on this were battery copper wire lights.
Yes. So I think a bit of twinkle
I think so.
is what's needed. Gorgeous. Can't wait to see it lit.
I know. The grand finale.
Oh, wow. You are a genius. It's so beautiful.
Well,
I think we should drink to that, don't you?
I agree.
Ah, here we are then.
Yeah.
Well, Merry Christmas to you.
And same again next year, I think.
Definitely, it's a date. I think we need a top up, don't you?
I think so too.
I do think that the combined talents of Rachel and Arthur have made something really spectacular. But the swags are a really good idea and as simple as anything. Now, I've set this pot here so we can see it from the house, and I put it up on chocks, and that is important, particularly for a big pot in winter, because they can become saturated if it's very wet. Water it in, obviously, initially, and then unless it's very, very dry, you don't need to worry at all. And the great thing about these plants are that they will flower and look good whatever the weather. And the truth is that here at Longmeadow in winter, it can be a bit grey and very wet. So let's have a break and go to some sun for our first visit to one of your gardens.
My name's James and I live in a small town in Spain called Campeo. I decided to do a video of the winter months in Spain. This is my video diary and I hope you enjoy it. It's the 6th of November And the angel's trumpet is flowering for the 6th or more time. The olives are on the tree, and I don't know what to do with them. As you can see, we have a fig tree. I did buy that one about half a metre tall, and 2 years later, it's overtaking the garden. We learn things here, or I do. It's Boxing Day, and as you can see, the mandarins have decided that they're ready to be harvested, I think. Flowers are still deciding to show themselves, and there is going to be a glorious display very shortly up there. It's March. Everything continues to flower. The angel's trumpet, as we know it, is in its 3rd year, and it just continues to flower and flower. It's May, and I think I've come to the end of my video diary. It's been an interesting experience, and as a 70-year-old plus, I've learnt a lot about gardening, about nature, and one thing, the smell of this flower at night is absolutely intoxicating.
Of course, the reason why James's brugmansias are smelling so good in the evening is because that's when they attract their pollinator. And I say pollinator in the single because they're pollinated by the hawk moth, drawn in by the fragrance as dusk falls. Now, houseplants have been the biggest story in gardening over the last few years, and so many more people are now enjoying them, which is fantastic. But it's really important to control the watering regime over the winter months, because you've got your central heating on, the light levels are falling really low, and the plants need a lot less water than they do in spring or summer. But do spray. Get yourself a sprayer if you haven't got one, and give them a spray, and that will do them far more good. Now, by far and away, the most popular houseplant in the UK is Poinsettia. We apparently buy over 8 million of them every year. The vast majority of these, of course, are for Christmas. So we went to Yorkshire to visit a couple of sisters whose whole lives have been centred on poinsettias.
Our love of plants came from our dad. It's all the family's ever done for the last nearly 100 years. Our great-grandparents had an allotment here, and our grandparents had an allotment here, and our dad used to go down as a small boy and help them all with the growing. When he got a bit older, he used to grow cabbages and lettuce and sell them. His love just grew from there, and then he married Mum, and we came along, and we've just all grown up here ever since.
It's all we've known all our lives.
Yeah, we don't know any better. Dad absolutely loved his poinsettias, and life without growing them wouldn't have been the same for him. It was a complete and utter passion. So it's all we've ever known. They're like part of the family. Poinsettias originate mainly from Mexico, but down to the South Guatemala and Pacific coast side. And they were introduced to America first by Joel Robert Poinsett, hence the common name it's known and loved by, Poinsettia. To get poinsettias to change colour early, you have to give them 14 hours of constant darkness and 10 hours light. And we used to have big rolls of black polythene, and every night we used to roll it out, and then our jobs as children was to go underneath it and make sure it was completely black and there was no light getting in at all. In here we've got nearly 3,000 poinsettias. Of that there's 13 varieties, and most people think of poinsettias as being red, but they're not. In here alone, of the 13 varieties, we've got 10 that are not red. They should all be changed, and we'll have a lovely sea of red, white, marble, pink, glitter, mint, all sorts of colours.
4 weeks on, you'll notice this has changed into a lovely red traditional poinsettia. The Millennium is a nice tall variety with plenty of red on the bracts. When you decide to buy your poinsettia, make sure that you buy it from somewhere nice and warm with no drafts. Make sure that they're not wrapped up to start with, but do ask for them to be wrapped up on the journey home. Also, when you're taking it home, make sure it's not in the car too long, as they don't like the cold.
Once you've got it home, unwrap it and put it in a nice warm place away from cold drafts. Only water when the compost is dry, and don't be tempted to mist them. Poinsettias don't like being misted. If you go to repot them, don't tease the roots apart, keep them intact, and they won't need any feed over the Christmas period. As you can see, these haven't fully turned red yet. Some of these bracts are still turning, so you've got this one, it's got some limey colour in it, it's a bit mottled, but that's actually the red coming through in the bract. And here is a fully formed bract, all nice and red. This is Electric Cortez, and it's our first year growing this one. It is an orange one, and even the stems, as you can see, they're coming out a beautiful orange. Dad did try growing the oranges back in the 80s, but back then the colours weren't very strong. They were a bit wishy-washy. They've improved the varieties a lot better now.
Here we have Alaska White. It's one of the whitest of poinsettias. At the bottom, it has lovely green oak leaf leaves, and then further up the top on the bracts, well, it's a cream at the moment, but it will actually go to white, and then in the middle you'll get the little yellow flowers.
I really like this variety we've got growing here. It is called Superb Glitter, and the bracts on these are mutated, so no individual bract is ever the same. So like on this one, you've got a limey white coming through. On this one, it's red and white speckles, but on this one, it's half and half. They've all got their own unique fingerprint. Luckily, we've inherited his green fingers and his passion for growing. And luckily, we haven't inherited his bald patch.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Poinsettias mean to us Dad, Christmas.
And family. That's what it's about, isn't it?
Yes.
Right, that'll keep it trim for the rest of the winter. And by the way, if you are buying a poinsettia for yourself or a friend, keep it warm. The one thing they hate more than anything else is being cold. I'm just giving this holly a trim, which means, of course, I'm cutting off any likely berries, but I often get asked why a holly that seems to be healthy hasn't got any berries at all. And the reason is very simple. It's because hollies only carry their berries on female trees. And female hollies need a pollinator. They need a male holly in order to pollinate them. And of course, the range of hollies is huge, but it is the Ilex aquifolium, the native holly, that is the totemic Christmas plant with its shiny green leaves and its bright red berries. And of course, they can make magnificent trees. But at this time of year, you want to be thinking about what's going on the ground too. We tend to overlook the fact that even in winter, your ground cover plants, with a bit of careful planting, can look good too. And Adam is exploring these invaluable elements of a beautiful winter garden.
The favourite and most famous winter plants are often the most flamboyant, with peeling bark, bright stems, or gorgeous flowers and scent. But often the best winter combinations are because of what's on the ground, covering the winter soil and setting off the plants. Ground cover can be glorious in all shapes and colours. Corsican hellebores create a sea of limey green flowers, and coloured ones bring cheer to any border. Heathers are making a comeback in many planting schemes. They're tough, good in pots, and complement the rich colours of evergreens and stems. Early bees love them too. Euonymus can bring soft tones of green and yellow, while winter aconites bring a carpet of acid yellow. This inky black grass, Otheopogum, sets contrasting trees and flowering shrubs off to their very best. Especially with this blast of yellowy lime from the Libertia sitting alongside. In naturalistic planting, this grass Rheonechia with its sword-like leaves works really well, especially with a sprinkling of snowflakes peeking through. And for seasonal ground colour, who can beat a sea of crocus, iris, early daffs, or a scattering of cyclamen around the base of your trees? Always a winner.
I do so agree about cyclamen. I love seeing great drifts of them. Now, I've planted this holly. It doesn't look like a holly, but it is. It's Ilex Koheniana, which is a cross between our native Ilex aquifolium and Japanese holly. The Japanese holly is what gives it these marvellous leaves that look a bit like sweet chestnut, which is why it's called the chestnut leaf holly. And it will grow into a good-sized conical tree with big red berries. Of course, it needs a mate to berry, but it doesn't have to be the same variety. And the key thing when you're planting any holly is to remember that what they thrive in is full sunlight, good drainage, and plenty of moisture. Here in the dapple shade, it'll be fine. Now, still to come on today's programme. Sue is in her garden preparing presents for Christmas.
It's a very suitable Christmas gift. As I'm doing it, the smell is delicious. I'm getting really hungry.
Hello.
Hello. How are you?
Carol visits the comedian Joe Lycett to discover his newfound love of gardening and help him prepare a dazzling display for next spring.
It's like a slow-motion firework display, and I feel like I've just lit the fuse.
Ta-da!
And next year, I'm going to see those explosions.
But first, we join Advili as she tours the historic gardens at Levins Hall.
Set in a quiet corner of Cumbria is some beautiful parkland. But tucked within is a 300-year-old garden, once long forgotten, but still here, thanks to a royal gardener, devoted daughters, and a lot of luck. And with the most extraordinary topiary. Levins Hall has some of the oldest topiary in the world. There are over 100 Alice in Wonderland type pieces, and about 30 are original. Planted as small trees in the 1690s for the owner, Colonel James Graham. Graham was well connected. He'd worked directly for King James II, and he bought Levins Hall as a country retreat when the Catholic king fled the country, and he took the king's gardener with him. Guillaume Beaumont had worked for the king at Hampton Court and trained under Le Notre, who created the gardens at Versailles, so he was a good catch. He was given a house in the grounds, still lived in by the head gardener today, and he devised a series of structured garden rooms, each with their own theme and linked by ruler straight corridors. It was the drive for inch-perfect precision that made topiary so fashionable. In 17th century Europe, the rigid formality of the gardens was an expression of the owner's wealth, status and power, proving that even nature could be tamed to their will. And so the bigger, the sharper and more elaborate the topiary, the better. Pictures from the last 300 years show the topiary as a key feature with pieces that still grace the garden. This pair are known as the great umbrellas, with their lifted crowns giving space for a seat. There's one known as the judge's wig, so large it had room for a summer house inside. This one is a double arch, topped with a crown. And this was known as the cup and saucer, complete with handle. Over the decades, the handle had a bit of a sulk, and so it's now been reshaped into this marvellous top hat. It takes two gardeners 2 months to recut these shapes each year, but in these 8 acres there is so much more to see. A flower-filled orchard, bowling green, fountain garden and long borders, all of which sing with colour in the summer. The designer, Beaumont, needed a lot of plants, and very excitingly, the original documents are here, charting their arrival. These are some of the receipts from 1689, and they're even signed by Beaumont. And you've got 68 roses, 68 honeysuckles, 25 yews, Spanish firs. This folder is full of receipts, but just this one alone is over £23, which is about 2 years' salary for Beaumont alone. It's just incredible. With his boss, Graham, down in London, news was sent regularly about the garden's progress, including plans for this viewpoint, with oaks on either side. It featured in many letters. One of them voiced concern about whether this avenue of trees, as it grew, would obscure the view. They were planting saplings and thinking 300 years ahead. And looking at it now, they were right. Having any gap in the boundary wall was a radical step, as most 17th century gardens had big walls and high hedges. This huge beech is the fulcrum of the garden, creating separate spaces and making secret paths to areas like this wilderness or wild area. The beech has such thick old stems, it's thought to be original, and that's the magic of this garden. Most of the structure is exactly as Beaumont left it, because by luck, the garden was handed down via female relations who lived in grander houses elsewhere with their husbands. But because they loved the gardens, they insisted they were maintained and ignored the latest fashions. So while most formal gardens got swept aside for the new landscape movement, gardeners here were always gardening, cutting the topiary and stamping their mark. And today, gardening while guarding the past is very much alive. This fountain garden with bleached limes and mistletoe was added just 10 years ago, but you'd never know it. And in the topiary garden, as older pieces fall, new ones are constantly added and cut into pyramids before the big decision is made as to the new shape. Levins Hall is a snapshot of 17th century formality in all its glory. And thanks to just 10 head gardeners since Guillaume Beaumont's time, it's still evolving.
I think Levins Hall is one of our great national treasures. I've been lucky enough to go there a few times, and it does look fantastic in the middle of winter too. Now, what I'm doing here is sorting out seeds. And this is a job I do every year because if you're anything like me, you will hang on to seed packets that are long past any chance of viability. So what I do is keep this year's seeds. A year older than that, I also keep and make a point of sowing those. And then if they're 3 years old, I keep them if I want them, but don't expect much from them. And anything older than that, be ruthless, chuck it out, and you'll save yourself compost, seed trays, time, and disappointment. Right, it's time to go to the second of your gardens this week. And I'm proud to say, this is one that has been inspired by the Jewel Garden.
Hello Gardeners World, my name is Carl.
And I'm Nairi.
And we're two keen gardeners up here in Manchester. Now we were really inspired by Monty's Jewel Garden. We wanted to create a garden that we could just relax and unwind in.
Last year during the pandemic, it was a stressful time for us both. And at the end of the day, we just wanted a garden where we could escape to.
And also help beat planning a wedding for the 4th time during the pandemic.
This is a new build property and the condition of the soil when we bought it was poor. The secret to a happy garden was minimal digging, lots of compost, and the plants love it.
We have lots of different types of dahlias used in our garden. I think we used about 60 dahlias in total. And we have made use of some spare calendula seeds and marigold seeds, as well as making use of the hydrangea to cover up the compost heap at the back.
So Carl had his plans for the garden, but I did too, and I naughtily sabotaged his plans by adding vegetable seeds into the border. So here is my lovely tomato plant, and here is our potato.
One thing that I've learnt this year is that if you've got a plan, you've always got a partner who will decide to do her own thing and change the plan for you. But it's been fun.
And we've really enjoyed ourselves. Bye!
Bye!
Well, Carl and Nari have learnt the greatest secret of gardening, which is to have fun. Now, when I want mistletoe to decorate the house for Christmas, I come into the garden nowadays, because here in the orchard, it's got really established. It needs trees of a certain maturity, and it likes apple trees, hawthorn, poplar. Now, it's semi-parasitic, so it feeds off the tree, and it's also got leaves that can photosynthesize to a degree. And it's spread by birds, 2 birds in particular, mistle thrush and blackcaps. And it loves warm, wet weather, which is why on the west of the country, it's much more common than on the east. Now, a few weeks ago, Carol went to visit the comedian Joe Lycett to discover his newfound love of gardening.
It's
It's always exciting when you hear about somebody getting a gardening bug. But when it's somebody you love watching on the telly, it's especially exciting.
Having dabbled with tomatoes, Joe Lycett started gardening just a few years ago. His mum's a keen gardener, but this is the first solo endeavour in his own long, thin plot.
Hello.
Hello. How are you?
I'm fine. I'm so thrilled to be here. And I brought you a pressie.
That is great fun. What is it?
It's a kind of rhubarb and it's called Sunbeckia Juliana. How about
Oh,
that?
a pun title,
I,
Sunbeckia.
I know you like a good pun.
I
don't you?
love a good pun. I'm not going to say it's a good pun, but it's a beautiful plant.
Yeah, I'm thrilled to be here, but when I look round, I mean, I thought you were quite new to gardening and it looks very established, but really, really lovely.
Thank you. I'll take that compliment. Thank you. I've been doing it about 3 years. But yeah, I'm really chuffed with how it's sort of come together. There's still loads I want to do to it,
Yeah.
but you're never finished, are you?
Oh, no, you mustn't ever finish gardening. It has to go on and on and on.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we'd be out of work. I mean, look how well those zinnias are growing.
Yeah, the zinnias are really happy there, aren't
Yeah.
they? This seems to be a happy border. I don't
Yes.
know, and it's a happy accident. I don't know quite how I managed that.
All the best things in gardening are accidents.
Yeah.
Don't tell all those garden designers.
I'm quite Darwinian with my gardening. I just put it in, and if it dies, it dies.
Right.
And that's what it wanted to do.
Evolution rules.
Yeah, exactly.
Just love this pergola. It's great to have a bit of height, isn't it,
Oh,
when you've
yeah.
got a long, narrow garden.
Yeah, I put it in about... I mean, I say I put it in. A big, strong boy put it in, and I watched him do it about 4 years ago. And I've been trying to grow things on it. And this has been in for a couple of years. This has just gone mad.
That's one of the most beautiful clematis I've ever seen.
It's so wonderful, isn't it?
It's delightful.
Yeah.
Look how the bees love it too.
The bees are mad for it, but I also just love the seed heads and how sort of delicate and furry and lovely they are. This plant brings me so much joy just on its own. The rest of the garden wouldn't necessarily have to be here and I'd still get loads
you
from
could
this.
still and look up into
Yeah.
it. Hopefully it'll come right across here, won't it?
Yeah, that's the plan.
But it'll be very dainty shade. I love that.
I
What
know.
on earth is it?
It is a calet.
Right.
Never done them before.
I've never seen it before.
It's new to me as well.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they're somewhere between a kale and a sprout.
So
and,
these little bits on the inside will develop and...
And yeah, and then you harvest them and roast them, and I've eaten them before and they are so good.
Yeah,
Bit
I
of garlic, bit of oil, bit of salt.
Absolutely lovely.
I like having a mix of flowers and edible things.
Yeah. I'd put that in the middle of my flower bed any day of the week.
Yeah, the leaves inside. Mmm.
Are they scrumptious?
They are scrumptious, yeah. I mean, actually, it gets a bit bitter as you...
Does it? Right. I'll just watch you eating it
just
at the
watch me
moment.
eat it,
That with that helianthus in the background is lovely.
Yeah.
And I also love it with this tagetes.
No, I didn't really know anything about them, but I read that they go well with tomatoes, that they attract something...
It's a bit of companion planting. What they do is attract hoverflies and the hoverflies in turn will keep the white fly or green fly aphis away from your veg.
But then I just find them so luxurious. I mean, look at them, it's like sort of velvety.
They are velvety, aren't they?
Yeah.
So when did you really get into vegetables?
I just started to experiment in lockdown and was amazed at how much joy I got out of it and how enriching it is to be able to literally take something you've nurtured here and walk a few paces into the kitchen and cook it and eat it. I find it one of the great things in life.
Very short journey, isn't it?
It's a very short journey, very low
here and there.
emissions.
And you've got cucumbers. Yeah.
There's a huge one back there.
Look at that.
He's happy. And it's so delicious.
Before my visit, Joe had mentioned he'd like to learn about lasagna planting using spring bulbs in pots. So it was only right to bring the ingredients along.
I think I saw it in a magazine.
Yeah.
And I just liked the idea of it. It made me hungry. But also, I've done tulips and daffodils and crocus, but I always do one pot for one thing.
Yeah. The whole idea is that you have different sorts of bulbs which grow at different rates, and they'll all come through at the same time and give you this absolutely magnificent show.
Yes.
So, you know, it's just a thing if you like it bright, colourful, possibly garish, but...
That's me.
It starts with peat-free compost over terracotta crocks.
So ingredient number 1, tulips.
Yes.
Because they take the longest to grow. They've got tall stems.
How many should I put in here? What do you think?
Lots. As long as they don't touch each other.
This one's called Barcelona. It's tall and robust, with shocking pink flowers and a lovely purple sheen to the stems.
It's very pleasing to me, that. It's very symmetrical.
Brilliant.
Over that goes more compost, so all the tulips are completely covered. And then a daffodil called February Gold, which does exactly what it says on the tin.
Do you know what? This bag says 7 bulbs. I've got 8.
Oh, there you go.
I feel like I've robbed a garden centre. Again.
On top of those goes more compost, and then a mixture of crocus and grape hyacinth for the last bulb layer.
Let's get as much in there as possible.
Go for it.
I like
definitely.
a full lasagna.
Definitely. You could just empty the lot on there. That's it.
In my pot, I'm going for one variety of tulip, as I love a single blast of colour. This is Princess Irene, beautiful orange flowers flamed with purple. Then we've both got violas to grace the top.
And they'll keep producing flowers over through the winter?
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
But keep on deadheading them.
First, though, a trailing Muhlenbeckia to add a bit of texture.
I've got the Parmesan over here too. We're going to put some...
That's exactly what this is. This is the Parmesan, isn't it? OK. So, gosh, there's so much going on.
Ooh, it's lovely, isn't it?
I love that, because I love things that spill over a pot.
Yeah.
And this Muhlenbeckia
Yes.
is very much doing that. And then these lovely splashes of colour, and knowing in there is all that potential for the start of the new year.
Exactly, for the spring.
And my friend describes the garden as like a slow-motion firework display. And I feel like I've just lit the fuse.
Ta-da!
And next year, I'm going to see those explosions.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for coming. I've had a really brilliant day. And look at this great display I've got. I'm chuffed.
It's lovely. It really is.
By the way, if you've got any tulips lying around unplanted, or if you can find any in garden centres, you can still plant them. Get them in the ground by the new year and they will grow and flower perfectly well for spring. Now, I've divided this rhubarb plant. Now is the best time to divide rhubarb to reinvigorate it. Rhubarb can live for a long time, but it does need refreshing, and then it will go on producing with renewed vigour. And the secret is to dig it up, chop it up, and you can see it's got a very woody root in the middle, but it's the new roots that invigorate it. Make sure you've got at least one bud attached to the root. Plant it in really rich soil. Let it grow for a year. Feed it by mulching it thickly. Don't harvest it in the first year. Let the roots establish, and then you can harvest it in the second year and really go for it for another 2 or 3 years. And after about 5 years, you dig it up and do the whole thing again. That way, you keep a really vigorous supply of delicious rhubarb arriving every spring. Now, it's time to go and visit Sue Kent in her garden as she prepares for her Christmas.
I love getting ready for Christmas. I love the preparation, going out into the garden and selecting and collecting bits of greenery to decorate the house. I also love making gardening related gifts to encourage my family and friends into gardening. I'm going to do that later, but first I've got a job to do in the garden. As long as the ground is not waterlogged or frozen, between October and April is a good time to plant shrubs. I've got one I want to get into the ground now. This is Abelia phylum distichum, also known as false forsythia. The difference is that the true forsythia has yellow flowers, but this one has white flowers with yellow centres. It also flowers slightly earlier in the spring, which is excellent for me because this is when my white border is devoid of interest. So I'm going to get planting it. I'm going to loosen the soil first because I often find just shoving a spade in ends up giving me problems. So I'll give it a bit of a loosen. But if you've got a clay or chalky soil, you need to add a bit of organic matter. So I'm going to dig my hole. You want it to be about as deep as the pot. It has scented flowers, 5 foot by 5 foot. And although this is a small border, I'm going to allow it to cascade over the lawn with its arching stems. After the first year, a bit of gentle pruning is needed, and you just take it down to, a new bud once it's flowered. It flowers on bare stems, and then it starts to grow these lovely new stems with these lovely little buds, which will form the flowers for next year. I'm happy with that. I'm just going to water it in now. Right, this is a risk. I've got my Christmas jumper on and I'm playing with soil. It could go horribly wrong, but let's start. I've got lovely rosemary, which is an evergreen herb, and I'm going to pot it on, and it's going to be on my Christmas table, but a take-home present for my guests. It is a lovely scented plant. They love free-draining soil, so I'm going to put some cockle shells in the bottom of the pot to make sure that the hole doesn't seal up and it can drain through. A little bit of soil in because they're quite deep already. This is peat-free potting mix. It's a little bit of soil, a little bit of grit for drainage, and a little bit of compost. And of course, the added bonus of giving my family and friends the herb is if they have forgotten to buy any, they can snip a bit off and put it on their roasty potatoes or parsnips to give it an added bit of flavour at Christmas time. So it's a very suitable Christmas gift. As I'm doing it, the smell is delicious. I'm getting really hungry. Right, now finishing touches. Earlier in the year, I had a visit from Toby Buckland, who told me about something useful I could do with the leaves from my very large phormium. The phormium's also known as New Zealand flax. It's traditionally used, like sisal and hemp, for rope, string, matting, basket weaving, that sort of thing, and I've got a great use for it. But I've got to cut it down a bit. It's a bit too big like this. So I'm going to make a small cut. I want quite thin strings. I'm going to use my table just to split it, and then I get a lovely piece of string. It's incredibly strong. for Christmas time, and one of them is the cuttings of lavender, and I use them to help light our fires in the house in the winter. It's great for that because it's got natural essential oils that release and help the fire burn more quickly, and also you get a short, sharp lavender smell, which is lovely. And a natural way of tying them is using this string, and I like to put a few bunches in a basket, and it makes a really nice gift for people who've got fires. In late summer, I thought ahead and started collecting seeds, as I like to put together a seed mix to give as tree presents. This year I've got seeds like cornflower, flax, poppies, honesty. They're going to look gorgeous next year. But now it's time for the most sparkly part of the day, when my Christmas lights go on. To help me finish the fiddly bits and have some fun, my granddaughter Summer has come along.
I'm putting this fairy. Now I'm going to put this pepper on.
Who likes chilies, Summer?
Mum.
Your mum loves chilies, doesn't she? Have you got any robins there, Summer?
Yeah, I've got 2.
They're lovely red, aren't they? Same as the chilies. One of the things I like to do every year is to make a Christmas tree from twigs I find around the garden. This year I'm going with a white theme, so I've painted them. But I will often choose branches that look good just as they are, like cornus. And the really nice thing is, you can make them as small or as big as you like, depending on your space. Have you got any seed mixes, Summer?
Yeah. I've got loads of seeds in mine.
Ah, look at your tree, it's fantastic. I think when people come on Christmas Day and get their little tree gift, they're going to be really pleased, aren't they?
Mm-hmm.
I think they're going to look great for Christmas, don't you? Yeah, well done. Now I'd say I'm definitely ready for Christmas.
Right, I'm not going to carry you all the time. Okay, down you go. There's a good girl. There's a good girl. Well, I'm not quite as organised as Sue, and certainly not as inventive with my presents, but there is one more thing that I have to do for us to be ready for Christmas, and that's dig some parsnips. Parsnips seem to me an essential part of Christmas dinner, and what I like to do is to puree them with lashings of butter and cream and plenty of salt and pepper. It's fantastic with turkey, and also late at night by the light of a fridge door, very good eaten cold with a spoon. That is it for today. I hope you've enjoyed this celebration of Christmas, and I wish you all and your loved ones a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. And I'll see you back here at Longmeadow in spring. So until then, bye-bye.